1911. Tensions rise in Europe, the motor car has taken the Western world by storm, and the Mona Lisa is on public display at her permanent home at the Louvre in Paris. Widely regarded as one of the foremost paintings in art history, the Mona Lisa has captivated the hearts of millions since she was first unveiled over 500 years ago. Proclaimed by some as Leonardo da Vinci's greatest masterpiece, she's been coveted by many, so perhaps it's not that surprising then that if you were standing on the floor of the Louvre on the morning of August 21st, 1911, you might have just caught a glimpse of a small, stocky man emerging from a cramped supply closet wearing a clean white button-down artist's smock. To you, or anyone else in the building at the time, this wouldn't exactly seem all that unusual. The Louvre had many employees who wore clothing very similar to this. However, what he did next was far from the ordinary. Entering the Salon Carré, the room housing many of the Louvre's most precious artworks, he strode directly up to the Mona Lisa, confidently lifted it from its place fixed upon the wall, and then lugged it, still sheathed in its protective casing, into an enclosed stairwell nearby. Here the thief worked quickly to remove it of its protection and decorative Renaissance-era frame, still unable to roll up the painting since it was composed on a board of hard-grained poplar wood. He wrapped it securely in his smock, hoping to conceal its identity. Seemingly familiar with the layout of the museum, the stairwell led down to a door which if opened would lead out into a courtyard and one step closer to freedom. But here he encountered a problem. The door was locked and the thief did not have a key. Thinking quickly, the intruder produced a small screwdriver from his pocket and set to work removing the doorknob. Not more than a moment later, the museum janitor entered the stairwell and surprisingly didn't see anything wrong with the strange scene he had found before him. The thief explained to the janitor that he was trying to cut back through the museum but couldn't get the door open because the handle was missing. The handle he had just removed himself, mind you. The ever so helpful janitor used a pair of pliers to open the door and then suggested that they should leave it open, just in case anyone should have a need to use the staircase later on. Thanking him, the two men parted ways, the janitor none the wiser that he had just played a small part in the theft of one of the world's most prominent works of art. From here the route was simple. The thief cut back through another gallery before making his way back towards the main entrance of the museum. This early in the morning, there were not that many guards on duty, and as luck would have it, the lone guardsman who was supposed to be watching this entrance was on a break. Through an opportunistic plan, some insider knowledge, and just the right amount of luck, the Mona Lisa had just been stolen. You might expect that with the Mona Lisa now missing, someone was sure to have noticed fairly quickly, but you would be wrong. In fact, it would be over 24 hours before the alarm was raised. You see, the museum itself had been closed to the public on the day of the theft, a Monday, with only museum staff, copyists, cleaners and the like being allowed to roam its many halls. During this time, it wasn't uncommon for select works of art to be temporarily removed from their displays by conservationists or photographers, so if anyone did notice that the Mona Lisa wasn't present where she was supposed to be, they seemingly kept it to themselves. No, it wasn't until the following Tuesday, when the museum was once again open to the public, that the matter was raised with a museum staff member when a local artist set up his easel with the intention of creating his own work of art featuring some of history's most famous artworks, only to be disappointed to find that its centerpiece, the Mona Lisa, was absent. When he complained to a guard, he was met with indifference. As you might expect, the guard had simply assumed that the painting was being photographed somewhere else in the building. After some time, however, with the artwork still astray, he was convinced to check with other museum staff, who unfortunately seemed just as oblivious as he was. Eventually, higher-ups at the Louvre were informed and a thorough search was conducted, but to no avail. With their options narrowing, and time now strictly of the essence, the museum put out an official statement. The news startled Paris, and then the rest of the world. The Mona Lisa really was gone. In the days that followed, Paris was a hive of activity, and everyone was talking about the theft. If you were seen on the street carrying a painting-shaped package, you were immediately eyed with suspicion, and the police began questioning many. Anyone, in fact, they believed might present them with a credible lead. This would just so happen to include a young Pablo Picasso, who was interviewed over its disappearance. Police distributed more than 6,000 leaflets over the coming weeks, detailing the crime and offering a reward of 40,000 francs for information that would lead to the painting's recovery. Police set up checkpoints on roads leading out to Paris to search every vehicle that left, with customs inspectors following suit. If you had been anywhere near the capital at the time, you were bound to have your luggage checked. The janitor, who had unknowingly assisted in the theft, was also questioned thoroughly and asked to examine photographs of hundreds of museum employees, both past and present, but was unable to recall any truly helpful information. Every lead and rumour was followed up on, and anonymous tips came in from all over the world, with supposed sightings occurring as far abroad as Egypt and Japan. Newspapers worldwide reported on the case in a frenzy. Many seemingly trivial stories about the theft somehow made their way to print, with extravagant rewards offered for more information. Conspiracy theories were rampant too, with some speculating that the theft must have been the work of a group of avant-garde modernist artists, with others insisting that the painting was likely now in the hands of a rich American billionaire, their favoured candidate being JP Morgan. More still believed that with tensions on the rise with Germany, that the Kaiser himself could somehow have been involved. Or perhaps the whole thing had been orchestrated by a gang of thieves who intended on stealing the Mona Lisa only so they could sell forgeries on the black market to rich, naive art enthusiasts overseas. Eventually, the Louvre itself had to reopen, and large crowds of people gathered to bear witness to the unusual sight of 4 bare iron hooks, which solemnly marked the empty spot where the Mona Lisa used to reside. Sometime later, a colour reproduction of the Mona Lisa was commissioned and placed in lieu of the genuine artefact, but after a whole year had passed, museum officials had to confront the dawning reality that the painting seemed unlikely to ever be recovered. So, in December of 1912, the gap was filled with another portrait. So, enough of that. Where was she really? In the hands of a rich American billionaire, being sold off in a black market art auction, in the grips of an underworld crime ring? Well, actually, as it would turn out, the Mona Lisa had just been stolen by, and was now in the hands of, a rather modest Italian named Vincenzo Peruggia. Peruggia was an unassuming Italian national, living in France and working as a house painter, although he himself had aspirations of becoming a portrait artist. He had briefly worked at the Louvre as a handyman, and apparently had even helped in the construction of the protective casing housing the Mona Lisa. Because of his time working at the museum, police had at one stage considered him a suspect, and conducted an interview with him not long after the theft. But they seemingly bought his alibi of not being anywhere near the Louvre without much questioning. Perhaps having gotten in a little bit over his head, Peruggia kept the Mona Lisa hidden away in his possession for over 2 years. It's unclear whether or not he attempted to sell the painting to anyone within this period, with multiple sources, including Peruggia himself, contradicting each other greatly. But what we do know is that in November of 1913, he sent a letter to Alfredo Geri, an international art dealer working out of Florence, whilst posing as a man calling himself Leonard. Leonard, or Peruggia, claimed that they were an Italian patriot who had been overcome with the desire to return at least one of the many artistic treasures stolen from Italy during the Napoleonic era. Seemingly unaware of the fact that the Mona Lisa had been voluntarily taken to France by Da Vinci himself over 200 years before Napoleon's reign, he did happen to mention, though, that he himself did not come from wealth, and so would be humbled by a reasonable financial reward of some kind. Although understandably suspicious, Geri contacted Giovanni Poggi, the director of Florence's Uffizi Gallery, and the two of them invited Leonard to Italy. Not sure what to expect, Geri was perhaps a little taken aback when a young, thin Italian man with a rather charming moustache arrived at the meeting point, the dealer's gallery, on Thursday morning. He was polite and rather unassuming, although clearly a little on edge. Aiming to disarm the man quickly, Geri eagerly showed him to his private office to discuss the matter of the painting. When questioned about its authenticity, Leonard claimed to have good reason to be sure that it was genuine, calmly declaring that he himself had removed the Mona Lisa from its wall on the Louvre. Shocked, Geri asked the strange man where he was keeping the Mona Lisa. When Leonard responded saying that he had it with him in Florence, Geri arranged for them to meet again the following afternoon, but this time with Poggi so that they could authenticate the painting. The next day, after meeting with Geri and Poggi, Leonard would take the two men back with him to his hotel room. When they entered, Leonard retrieved a modest trunk made from white wood from under his bed. When opened, nothing of any real note seemed to be kept inside, just a random assortment of objects from a pair of pliers to a white smock to some plastering tools. However, after a moment and some prying, Leonard removed the bottom of the trunk to reveal a hidden compartment, and inside their prize, the Mona Lisa, carefully wrapped in a layer of red silk. It didn't take long for Poggi to authenticate the painting from here. Flipping it over revealed the Louvre's catalogue number and stamp on the back. With that said, the two men wanted to remove the painting from Leonard's possession as quickly as possible, and quite understandably. So, with some persuading, they were able to convince him to come back with them to the gallery with the painting, claiming they needed to do some further tests to be fully sure of its authenticity. From here, the two men explained to Leonard that the best place to keep the painting was at the Uffizi Gallery, since it would have to be the government that would authorise his payment and not the two men themselves. Perhaps overcome with the majesty of the building, or trusting in the integrity of the men before him, Leonard agreed. They shook hands, thanking him once again for his patriotism and great service to Italy before leaving. As soon as he was out of the building, Geri and Poggi contacted the authorities, and shortly after returning to his hotel room, Peruggia heard a knock on the door. It was the police. A few days later, the Italian government would put out an official statement, announcing to the world the recovery of the Mona Lisa, and after a triumphant tour through Italy over the next few weeks, Leonardo's masterpiece was finally returned to its home at the Louvre on January 14, 1914. In the 2 days following, over 100,000 people would visit the museum to witness it. Alfredo Geri, for his part, would end up receiving a reward of 25,000 francs for his effort, while Peruggia, now awaiting his trial in Italy, would have no such compensation. During his trial, he insisted passionately that he had simply acted as a patriot, and had carried out his daring heist for the Italian people, and not merely for personal gain. When asked how he stole the painting, he would give an abbreviated account of the theft that contradicted both what he had previously said to the police and the account he gave during pre-trial interviews. No one is really sure why his story changed so fluidly. Some have speculated that he was attempting to shield potential accomplices we don't know about, or perhaps he was trying to construct a version of events he thought would be most appealing to the Italian people. After the trial, Peruggia was sentenced to a rather lenient 1 year and 15 days in prison. It seems his tactics had garnered a significant amount of sympathy in the press, and only a month later, on appeal, his attorneys were able to have the sentence reduced to 7 months. Amazingly, since he had already been incarcerated for more time than that, Peruggia was promptly released. By now, however, the world was moving on. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria had just been assassinated, and soon the whole of Europe would be embroiled in a long and grueling war. So, Vincenzo Peruggia, national hero, master art thief, or petty crook, or perhaps somewhere in between. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future.